Go ahead.
This is Frankie Edgar, UFC fighter. Welcome to the Trevor Airdrie Show.
Welcome everybody to episode 15 of the Trevor Airdrie Show. I am your host, Trevor Airdrie. Special shout out to my boy Sharon for the theme song Get Back Up. You can purchase Get Back Up or any other Sharon music at www.sharon69.bandcamp.com. And without anything further, on to the show. The recap part 1 is sponsored by Street Soldier, sick swag at sick prices, like my shirt right here. I forgot actually to mention them last week, so I'm actually going to give them 2 segments this week. If you want to purchase any of the Street Soldier stuff, go to www.strtsoldier.com and get yours today. Alright, so we had UFC Fight Night 35. It happened last Wednesday. Main event, Luke Rockhold versus Constant Philippou. I did take Philippou to win. I thought he was going to take Luke Rockhold. Boy, was I wrong. Luke Rockhold defeated Constant Philippou via TKO at the first round at 2:31. It was a good fight, but Luke Rockhold just brought too much for Philippou to handle and squeaked out the victory. Luke Rockhold then is calling out Michael Bisping, but we do know after, later on in the show, I will get to it, but he's not going to get Bisping next, but I would assume that Rockhold will get a top 5 middleweight contender in the UFC. Co-main event of the night, Brad Tavares versus Lorenz Larkin. Tavares gets the win via unanimous decision. I did take Tavares to win, but I thought it was going to be a finish. I did not see this going to the judges, but that's how Tavares eked out the win here, so that's how he got it. Before that, TJ Dillashaw, Mike Easton. Dillashaw got a unanimous decision over Easton. I can't say enough, it was decision night for UFC Fight Night 35. So Dillashaw gets the win there. Yoel Romero defeating Derek Brunson via TKO. Impressive TKO at that. John Moraga gets back into the win column with a win over Dustin Ortiz via split decision. Very close fight. And starting out the night on the main card on Fox Sports 1 or Sportsnet 360 here in Canada, we had Cole Miller defeating Sam Sicilia via rear naked choke, and that happened at the second round at 154. So the rest of the card, going to run down really quickly here. Ramsey Nijem defeated Justin Edwards via decision. Elias Silveira defeated Isaac Vili Flag via decision. Trevor Smith over Brian Houston via split decision. Louis Smolka over Oz Killick via decision. And then the ones on Fight Pass, the new UFC Fight Pass, we had Vince Pinchel defeating Garrett Whiteley, once again, decision. And starting out the night, we had what was kind of an upset of Benel Dariush defeating Charlie Brenneman via submission, rear naked choke, round 1. Good night of fights. On a Wednesday night, it was really tough for a lot of people to tune in, especially with the Ultimate Fighter coming on afterwards, and a lot of Canadian fans were very excited for the Ultimate Fighter coming on after, so it was, the TV ratings on this one I heard were relatively low, but that's the way it goes when you have a card on a Wednesday, and when you're shooting out, 4 cards in January, there's another 3 advertised for February, 3 for March, and then 4 already announced for April. So they're kind of shoving a lot of fights down our throats at the time. So after the fight night, we had the awards, $50,000. Fight of the night goes to Yoel Romero, Derek Brunson. Knockout of the night, no surprise here, Luke Rockhold. And then submission of the night, also not a surprise, in Cole Miller. So that was the rundown number 1. So now we go to In the News. In the News is sponsored by Fear the Fighter Training Academy, located at 512 Charles Street East in Kitchener, Ontario. If you want to train with the best, you want to be the best, once again, you got to train with the best. So go down to 512 Charles Street East in Kitchener, Ontario, and sign up today. or you can go to www.fearthefightertrainingacademy.com and get a list of class schedules and whatnot. So, in the news this week, we had UFC Fight Night, the gate in attendance. It was a very low attendance. As Dana White said, it's justified by the big picture. Only a $231,000 gate. This is coming off of, a live gate of 5.8 for UFC 168. Granted, the fights were a lot different and a lot, less media coverage on these fights. But still, that's one of the second lowest UFC gates in like 5 years. So that's saying something right there. Maybe they should tone back a little bit of these cards. But Dana White said it's always good to lead into a new season of The Ultimate Fighter with a live free fight for the fans, which, you should never complain when the fights are free. Once again, earlier I said Luke Rockhold, he called out Michael Bisping after the knockout. It's not going to happen. Michael Bisping will be fighting Tim Kennedy, I believe it is, on the main event of the tough finale in April for Canada versus Australia. So that's probably not going to happen. Dana White responds to George St. Pierre for, the saying that his retirement was heavily based on the UFC's lack of drug testing, and said, if George has felt that way, you should have said it to my face. Instead of going to the media. But, this is going to be a long banter, I feel. Like, Dana's going to make stabs at St. Pierre, and then St. Pierre's going to eke a little bit more of his story out to the media. It's going to be a long process, I believe. But all roads lead back to either George retiring or George walking back to the octagon. There's no other alternative there. As well, UFC Fight Night 35, medical suspensions. Derek Brunson sidelined indefinitely with a broken jaw. And Cole Miller suspended 45 days with a broken hand. So those are going to be two guys that are going to be out of action for some time. A very cool news for MMA, not UFC, MMA, which is the sport, is Fedor Emelianenko. He carried the torch for Russia for the 2014 Sochi Games. So that's pretty cool that, they're giving a torch to a MMA guy when, in the Olympic community, it hasn't been regarded as a sport yet. So it is one of those things that is leading up to the announcement of MMA to the Olympics. As well, Attila Vey versus Emmanuel Newton. They're going to unify the Bellator light heavyweight title at Bellator 113 on March 21st. Sticking with Bellator, they're also going to have Vitaly Minakov going up against Czech Congo at Bellator 115, April 4th. And then there's, going back to the UFC, we have the filming of Tough Brazil so intense that some of Chael Sonnen's coaching staff feared for their safety. This isn't a surprise with how much trash talk Chael Sonnen has said about the Brazilians, Vanderlei Silva, Anderson Silva, the Nogs. The list goes on and on. He's trash talked Brazil for years and years and years, so this shouldn't be new. They did have to order in a special dose of security for this seasons of The Ultimate Fighter to make sure that Sonnen and his camp were safe in the filming of this show. As well, we have Rampage Jackson puts Tito Ortiz behind him. He's not interested in fighting Tito Ortiz anymore. He's entering the Bellator tournament later this year. And then Bellator president, in the same announcement of Rampage jumping into that tournament, he also announced that, the comments that Dana White has made about George St. Pierre have been completely and utterly distasteful, which, take them, leave them. Dana White says what's on his mind. I do believe that, if St. Pierre felt that way, he should have came upfront and honest and should have just said, you know what, Dana, this is what's ticking me off, and this is why I feel like I need to walk away. And then we had UFC legend Chris Lieben announcing his retirement to move into coaching. And sticking with another MMA legend, Tito Ortiz, future in fighting is in question right now, with a specialist saying paralysis is possible if allowed to fight. And that's all cited by Bjorn Remney in also a press conference. And then what I was the most excited for this week, the big announcement, Shogun versus Hendo 2, verbally agreed upon for UFC Fight Night 38 in Brazil on March 23rd. Everybody remembers Shogun. Hendo won back in at UFC 139 in November of 2011. It won a unanimous pick for Fight of the Year back in 2011. Granted, with the age and all that, I doubt we're going to see the same type of tilt. But you never know with two legends of the sport that, want to leave it all out on the line. And with Dan Henderson signing this new 6-fight deal, which is assumed to be his last, he's going to have to get this win to want to be anywhere close to that title picture anymore. And the same goes with Shogun. Like, after the knockout to Tahuna, he wants to stay in the winning ways. So, that was what happened in the news this week. Coming up next, the recap part 2. The recap part 2, sponsored by Street Soldier once again. Like I said, I forgot about them last week. I am definitely not going to forget about them this week. I guess I oversighted it last week. So, Street Soldier, get shirts like this I'm wearing right now. It says Believe in the Underdog. They got some great gear over there. And so go to www.strtsoldier.com and get yours today. And then again, if you see them at an event, go up and say hi to Jay, Johnny, and Christine. They're great people, and they got some great clothing, so go check them out. Alright, so the recap part 2 is WSOF 8. It took place on the weekend. We had 2 title fights on the card, and a night of great fights. I actually enjoyed this card immensely. I'm actually a big fan of WSOF. I really closely follow them, especially now that they have WSOF Canada, and a lot of great Canadians have been signed up to that. So the card on the weekend, main evented by Justin Gaethje versus Richard Patenauke. I did call Gaethje to take this one very easily, and he did. TKO strikes, round 1, 109. He just is a beast. Goes to I believe 11-0 in the cage, and takes the inaugural WSOF lightweight championship in that fight. Co-main event of the night, we had Anthony Rumble Johnson at light heavyweight. It's hard to believe this guy used to try to make fights at 155 and then 170 and then 185 and then, now 205. He's fought at heavyweight as well at 265. He defeated Mike Kyle with a very, very impressive knockout. If you do want to go check this out, check it out on YouTube. It was 203 in the first round, and he just clocks him, and Kyle just goes down. And then third fight of the night, I'm surprised this wasn't co-main event just because it was another inaugural WSOF title. Jessica Aguilar mauled Alita Gray. First round, 245, submission arm triangle choke. And she got the first ever women's strawweight championship. I made reference to it last week about how Jessica Aguilar is the best strawweight in the world in MMA. She unfortunately signed with WSOF, but with WSOF what they're doing is great stuff, but she unfortunately signed before the UFC created their division, and she's beaten the favorite to win Tough 20, the strawweight UFC edition there, Carla Esparza. So it's a great opportunity for her with WSOF, but with the UFC signing all those top 115ers, it's going to be fun to see where WSOF can bring her next opponent from. With Alita Gray, she was 4-0 before this fight, and she was just completely outclassed by the now 17-4 Jessica Aguilar. Before that, Cody Bollinger versus Tyson Nam. Bollinger gets the win via decision. And starting out the night on the main card on NBC Sports, it had Luis Palomino defeating George Patino via KO in the second round. And then I'm just going to run down the rest of the card really quick. We had Tyler Stinson defeating Vadlar Arujo via TKO. We had Derek Memon over Scott Barrett via decision. Alexis Villa beating Sidemark Honorario via decision. Freddie Asunasao over Brenton Hansen via split decision. And then starting out the night, Anderson Melo defeating Jose Caceres via submission heel hook. So great night of fights, but like the main card, if you want to go check out a few great moments, check out the Gaethje versus Patinock fight on YouTube, the Anthony Rumble Johnson knockout of Mike Kyle, and the submission that Jessica Aguilar gets Alita Gray in. And great night of fights though, so definitely check those out, and check out WSOF 9 when it comes out, and as well WSOF Canada, because they have a lot of great things coming their way. So coming up next, Outside the Cage. Outside the Cage is sponsored by Inner Circle Agency. It's a company ran by JT Warsh and Paul Bernier. They bring a whole bunch of former MMAers, current MMAers, like Rashad Evans, Frankie Edgar, Christine Cyborg Santos, Tito Ortiz, who else have they brought? Vanderlei Silva. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. So definitely check them out. And coming in March 7th and 8th, they are bringing Ken Shamrock, legend Ken Shamrock, to Kitchener on March the 7th. And that is the topic of Outside the Cage today, is UFC Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock coming to Kitchener, Ontario. He's going to be teaching a leg lock seminar. Not too many people teach leg lock seminars, so definitely check this out. You know, Ken Shamrock is a well-rounded professional athlete, professional MMA, professional wrestling. You know, fantastic human being. Met Ken last year when he came to Combo Sports here in Kitchener. But the event will be going on March 7th from 7 to 9. Like I said, leg lock seminar, plus a meet and greet for the people that come out to the event. If you want to know the list of accomplishments this man made, you know, he was 28-15-2 in MMA. He was the first ever UFC Super Fight Champion, which eventually turned into the UFC Heavyweight title. He was the first inductee into the UFC Hall of Fame with Royce Gracie. He was the first fighter to defend any championship in the UFC in the 20-year history, the first fighter to do so. King of Pancrase in 1994, first ever champion of the same thing. So that's pretty incredible. He was a Pride Grand Prix 2000 Finals Super Fight winner, number 8th on the PWI, which is like the biggest wrestling publication in the world. He was number 8 in 1998. He was the first ever TNA World Champion, which was formerly the NWA Heavyweight Champion. He was WWF Intercontinental Champion, the WWF Tag Team Champion with the Big Boss Man, and the 1998 WWF King of the Ring, which WWF, for those who know, WWE, it's the exact same thing. So, list of accomplishments is incredible. Leg lock seminar, which, you know, not too many people teach leg locks, so it makes it a can't miss event. If you want to buy tickets, you can go to 512 Charles Street East in Kitchener, Ontario. Tickets are $50, which is the seminar / meet and greet, and then $65 for the seminar, meet and greet, and after party to, you know, hang out with a legend after you just learn leg locks with the man. You know, it's going to be a great night, so definitely come out and check that out. So, coming up next, Trevor's Corner. Trevor's Corner is currently unsponsored. If you want to sponsor it, you can hit me up on my email at MNATrevor, that's my Twitter. If you want to hit me up on my email, it's mnatrevor@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on Facebook, Trevor Airdrie, or on Twitter even, mnatrevor. So my topic for Trevor's Corner is Tough Canada, Episode 1 and Episode 2. The show is usually taped yesterday, but I figured I would put it on hold because I wanted to cover both Episode 1 and Episode 2 with my boy Elias Theodoro fighting on it last night. So Episode 1 was very, very action-packed. Canada wins the coin flip that was flipped by Kyle Noak, which gave Canada power in the house with Patrick Cote picking the first fight. Dana White announced that the fighters will receive $25,000 for knockout of the season, $25,000 for submission of the season, and $25,000 for fight of the season, as well as a new added perk of $5,000 if you finish the fight. If you finish the fight via submission or knockout, $5,000, easiest $5,000 you can make is finish the fight. Do not let it go to the judges. So Cote, he seemed like an incredible coach. He's more in it for the fighters than himself. He said, if you want me to mentor you, I'll mentor you. If you want me to train you, I'll train you. If you want me to jump in the cage with you, I'll jump in the cage with you. No matter what, Patrick Cote is there for the Team Canada, and he seemed more of like a common person than, I've already made it. I don't care about you, like some of the past coaches of the Ultimate Fighter have done. What made me laugh from episode 1 is the Australians think we're cocky people. There are cocky people in Canada, but they were talking about their records, and if you look at the Canadian records and you look at the Australian records, the Canadian records are better. Like, they're higher win to loss ratio. Most of the Canadians have had more fights than the Australians. There are like the odd Australian record that looked impressive on the show, but they weren't being cocky. They were just trying to say, the records and whatnot. A big thing for the Australians, the team struggled with the time difference and the jet lag for sure. You had some of these guys saying they were on like a flight for 14 hours. Some of them said they were on the flights for longer. It was definitely a big advantage for Canada to host this. So most of our Canadians had no jet lag, and if they did, it was like a flight from Alberta to Quebec City. So it wasn't like that big of a deal. But for the Australians, they looked tired when they got off that jet, and then they got right off the jet and, had to get ready for a fight. Well, the first guy that fought definitely had to. So the fight for the first episode was Cajun Johnson versus Team Australia's Brendan O'Reilly. The fight was once again picked by Cote because he won the previous coin toss. And Cajun Johnson picked up the win after a long 2-year hiatus. His last fight was in October of 2011. So he picked up the win, defeating Brandon O'Reilly via submission, rear naked choke in round 1. Very quick, and like I said, easy $5,000 win by Cajun Johnson. And then Patrick Cote at the end of episode 1 picked Team Canada Elias Theodero versus Team Australia's Zine Saliba for episode 2, which turned into last night, episode 2, which I was lucky enough to go out and actually watch it with a whole bunch of guys from Fear the Fighter Training Academy, and Chad Laprise, who's on the Ultimate Fighter Canada versus Australia, and he's from Adrenaline Training Center and TriStar Gyms, which are 2 gyms that are absolutely incredible. And then he came out and enjoyed the night with us, and he's actually going to be fighting next week, so that's pretty cool. And so last night's episode, it was, very regular type of episode 2 programming with the UFC Tough. It's a little bit more trash talk, a little bit more arrogance starting to come out. Canada celebrating the win, Australia not being too happy about it. Australia is, starting to really hate them in the house, probably because, they're 1-0 already. And then last night's episode, they go to 2-0 with Elias beating Zine Saliba via unanimous decision. It was Elias Theodero completely ground dominating Zine Saliba, which was a very impressive way to take out this guy from Australia when Zine Saliba, from what I've seen, it has some pretty good hands and some pretty good knockout power. So it was a smart move by Elias to take it to the ground and had an incredible slam. And so Elias moved on through the house, making it 2-0 for Canada. Next week, the guy that came out with us last night, Chad Laprise, he's going to get his turn for Canada, hopefully making it 3-0. I'm a big fan of both Elias and Chad Laprise, and I hope Chad can make it 3-0 for Canada next week. And so we'll leave that at that. All right, coming up next, the rundown. The rundown is sponsored by M&A Sports Media. You can come check us out at www.mnasportsmedia.com, Or, we do events all over the place. We're going to be on board with the PFC2 coming up in March, on March the 8th, as well as we're at a bunch of grappling tournaments. We're all over the place, so definitely check us out if we're coming to an event near you. Come up, say hi, we'll talk MMA all day. And if you want news or to see any of these past videos that I've uploaded, you can go to www.mnasportsmedia.com and check us out there. So the rundown is for UFC on Fox 10. It takes place this Saturday, January 25th in Chicago. The main card is on Fox. It's a pretty impressive main card, actually. Main evented by Benson Henderson, former UFC lightweight champion, against Josh Thompson, who just had an impressive knockout win over Nate Diaz. He was supposed to fight Anthony Showtime Pettis in December, but when Pettis got hurt there, he had to drop out, and the fight was scrapped. And then, so now he's going to get a contender in Benson Henderson. And I'm going to actually say Josh Thompson's going to win this fight. I have a gut feeling he's going to knock him out in the first round, but if it goes to the judging, I have a very hard time believing that somebody's going to give the fight to somebody else other than Benson Henderson, just based on past events. I believe Benson lost to Frankie both times. I believe Benson lost to Gilbert Melendez. So Josh Thompson needs to finish this fight. And I'm gonna say a first round knockout. I'm gonna jump on the Thompson bandwagon, and that he's going to derail Benson Henderson's train. In the co-main event of the night, two heavyweights going at it: Gabriel Gonzaga versus Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic had an impressive win over Roy Nelson last year in Winnipeg, and then Gabriel Gonzaga, he dethroned Crow Cop back when Crow Cop was coming to the UFC, and it was supposed to be set in stone that Crow Cop was going to fight Randy Couture for the title, and it was the head kick heard around the world, and usually Crow Cop was the guy to deliver those head kicks, but in that case it was Gabriel Gonzaga, and Crow Cop was never the same. Well, this is Gabriel Gonzaga's next chance to fight a Croatian, and Stipe Miocic to avenge the loss of Mirko Crow Cop. I'm going to go with Miocic in this fight. I think it's going to be a first or a second round knockout just because it is a heavyweight fight. They don't generally leave anything on the table. If it goes to the ground, I'm going to take Gabriel Gonzaga all day, but if it stays standing, which I do believe it will, I'm going to go with Stipe Miocic, and I'm going to say it's probably going to be like a right uppercut or something like that, and that's going to end that fight, I believe. Before that, Donald Cerrone versus Adrian Martins. I'm going to take Cerrone via submission. He's just so good on the ground. Such a good 155er on the ground that I'm going to have to go with Donald Cerrone in that one. Before that, Darren Elkins and Jeremy Stevens. This one I went back and forth for. I think this one has a very good chance of being fight of the night. Either this one or Benson versus Thompson is going to be fight of the night, I believe. And I went with Elkins in this one. Probably via decision, just because Jeremy Stevens is no slouch, and neither is Darren Elkins, so I'm going to go with a decision on that one. And then the rest of the card, I'm going to go through really quick. I'm going to take Sergio Pettis over Alex Caceres. I'm going to go with Eddie Wineland against Yves Jambouin. Chico Camus, I believe, is going to beat Yaitsin Beza. I went with Hugo Viana over Junior Hernandez. Darren Cruikshank, I believe he's going to destroy Mike Rio. And I believe Mike Rhodes is going to defeat George Sullivan. That one will be on UFC Sportsnet 3. All those fights will be on Sportsnet 360. Main card on Fox. And then one more fight on the UFC Fight Pass, that new thing that they unveiled before UFC 168. I'm going to go with Nikita Krylov defeating Walt Harris. So that'll be the fights. They are this weekend, so definitely check those out if you are available. And, thank you for joining me for this episode of the Trevor Airdrie Show. Thanks to Sharon for the theme song, Get Back Up. My sponsors, Street Soldier. I forgot about you last week, but I got you twice this week, so, I appreciate you being on board with me. M&A Sports Media, Fear the Fighter Training Academy, Inner Circle Agency, and make sure you go see Ken Shamrock March 7th at Fear the Fighter Training Academy from 7 to 9. And join me next week for a brand new episode. And until next time, dream it, believe it, achieve it. I'm Trevor Airdrie, signing off.